Make no mistake, dropping out of the top tier of English football triggers an instantaneous and brutal revenue contraction. A club finishing 17th in the Premier League receives approximately £127 million in central distributions just for participating. Relegate that same club to the Championship, and the base EFL central distribution plummets to around £8 million. For a mid-market team, that drop requires a harsh rebuild. For a highly leveraged super club, it triggers a mathematical crisis. The specific club in our model carries a highly structured debt load of £851.7 million. A corporate entity cannot simply halve its annual revenue overnight and continue to service nearly £1 billion in secured debt under standard operating procedures. To understand how a club survives this event, we have to run a comparative financial stress test over a 2-year timeline. What the data reveals is that financial survival is dictated entirely by the time horizon. Year 1 produces a bizarre cash-generative anomaly. Year 2 guarantees corporate death. This waterfall chart models the macro-level revenue collapse. We begin with a baseline top-flight revenue of exactly £565.3 million. By year 1 of the Championship, that total compresses to between £320 and £360 million. Look specifically at the matchday and commercial segments. They absorb immediate heavy losses. Corporate hospitality is uniquely exposed here. This is a business-to-business product. Clients are paying to entertain guests against elite top-tier opposition. Once the fixture list fills with second-tier opponents, multi-year premium memberships expire and do not renew. Data suggests this category alone faces a revenue collapse of up to 65%. To prevent an immediate default, clubs rely on a massive external subsidy, parachute payments. During the 2022-23 campaign, 92% of the distributable revenues made by the English game went to the 20 Premier League teams and the 5 clubs receiving these exact parachute payments. But an external subsidy of £40 to £50 million cannot cover a legacy wage bill. To bridge the remaining gap, super clubs engineer contractual tripwires into their operations. The senior squad has mandatory 50% wage reduction clauses embedded in their contracts. Upon relegation, these clauses activate immediately. A wage bill of £165 to £180 million is slashed nearly in half, requiring zero negotiations with players or agents. Even with parachute payments and automatic wage cuts, the math remains negative. The relegated football club continues to hemorrhage cash, putting them on a direct collision course with profitability and sustainability rules. To satisfy PSR limits and debt covenants, the club is forced into an immediate player fire sale. This equation visualizes the critical metric for financial survival: accounting profit on disposal. For regulatory compliance, a player's gross transfer fee is irrelevant. The only number that matters is the distressed sale price minus the player's remaining net book value on the balance sheet. This scatterplot functions as a fire sale matrix. It maps the squad's distressed market value on the x-axis against their remaining amortization schedule on the y-axis. The size of the bubble represents the actual accounting profit generated. The optimal assets for liquidation sit right here. These are players with high market value but heavily amortized net book values. Selling one of these assets can yield £50 to £65 million in pure accounting profit. Academy products and low-cost acquisitions operate similarly. Because their net book value is nearly zero, any fee received registers as outsized pure profit on the ledger. Conversely, players in this red quadrant are toxic assets. They carry high net book values, meaning any distressed sale price would actually trigger an accounting loss. They cannot be sold. This creates a brutal strategic irony. The most mathematically efficient assets to sell are exactly the high-performing core players needed to win promotion. By ruthlessly liquidating the top 10 most efficient assets on this matrix, the club generates an estimated £180 to £245 million. This massive, sudden injection of pure accounting profit completely neutralizes the heavy operating losses currently dragging down the balance sheet. This is the paradox of year 1. By intentionally betting its sporting capability and liquidating intangible assets, the club artificially engineers a cash-generative fiscal year, temporarily staving off financial collapse. That mathematical trick works exactly once. If the club fails to win immediate promotion, they enter the Year 2 stress test. This side-by-side pro forma income statement compares Championship Year 1 against Year 2, isolating the profit on player disposal and EBITDA line items. The club's strict U.S. private placement debt covenants measure overall financial health using a specific formula, EBITDA against debt service ratios. In Year 1, the club maintained covenant compliance strictly because player trading profits are legally included in EBITDA calculations. The fire sale propped the numbers above the safety threshold. By Year 2, that high-margin player asset pool is exhausted. The profit on player disposal line item drops violently, approaching zero. Simultaneously, secondary waves of revenue decay hit. The parachute payments stepped down by a further 10% in the second year. The sponsorship contracts that survived the initial drop finally hit their renewal cycles and are renegotiated at depressed second-tier rates. The resulting operating cash deficit is catastrophic. The bottom line flips from a near-zero gap in Year 1 to a massive funding requirement of £150 to £250 million in Year 2. Without the fire sale ammunition to mask the operating deficit, EBITDA collapses and the U.S. private placement covenants are exposed to direct breach. Year 2 strips away all the accounting illusions. The carefully managed sporting decline transforms into a terminal corporate liquidity crisis. The cumulative 2-year funding gap now sets at a terrifying £350 to £450 million. This poses an existential threat to the primary ownership group. The £851 million debt facility is physically secured against their £1.5 billion stadium asset. Ownership cannot simply write a check to cover the gap. Profitability and sustainability rules place strict regulatory limits on the maximum amount of equity that can legally offset operating losses. The primary owners must secure and inject fresh funding that drastically exceeds historic capital injection rates. The magnitude of the cash deficit exhausts internal resources, forcing the ownership group to seek external rescue capital. This pie chart illustrates the final pressure release valve, a minority equity sale to external investors. Selling in a distressed state is punishing. Because the club's valuation is deeply compressed, new investors take a disproportionately large slice of equity. This type of transaction attracts distressed comfort capital, entities like U.S. private equity firms that target and prey on these exact distress scenarios to acquire prime assets at a discount. Introducing this aggressive external capital permanently restructures the entire organization's governance, completely altering the board composition and shifting the principal-agent dynamics. The physical infrastructure, highly structured wage models, and complex debt profiles of a modern superclub are incompatible with second-tier economics. The modern football enterprise is brilliantly over-engineered to survive a single anomalous shock through asset liquidation. But a prolonged loss of elite status guarantees the permanent destruction of shareholder equity and the end of the club as it was previously.